Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
If you're gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my amazing listener. Welcome and thank you for tuning in to episode 283 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. It's amazing to have you here with me today. And today is all about you. Yep, you. My guest, Katrina Myers, and I have a massive question for you 2 months into this year already. And that question is, are you looking after yourself? Like, are you really looking after yourself? For many small business owners, including myself, I can be my best friend or my own worst enemy all in the same day, or really, if I'm being honest, probably all in the same hour. So for me this year, I'm trying to prioritize me a little bit more because my life is shifting again. And this year is going to look different. Not just because I'm going to be a grandma this year. I know, right? How super cool is that? I'm going to be a grandma in my 40s and I could not be more excited. Bring on August. I am just ecstatic about that. But that means a few things are going to have to change this year because I want to be the best grandma there can possibly be. And I want to work my business around, yet again, another stage of my life. And many of you, which, will undoubtedly share some of these changes that are coming up, I will of course share with you as we go through on the podcast and as the year rolls on. So this year I'm trying to look after myself a little bit better, and I'm just sort of wondering, is that what you're going to do? Or are you 2 months in and already feel burnt out or haven't recovered from the burnout you felt last year? So who is Katrina Myers and why is she asking you such a huge question inside your ears today? Well, Katrina is a fellow rural podcaster. Her podcast is called This Rural Life. She's a speaker. She's also an avocado farmer, an Airbnb host, and a meditation and well-being educator. Yes, she has lots of hats. She's also a mum and a wife over and top of all of that businessness that she does every single day. And because she wears all these hats, I think she's a perfect person to be educating us on meditation and well-being today because quite frankly, she must practice this stuff in order to get through her days, undoubtedly. So before I get into letting Katrina into the studio, just a few quick messages if I could have your attention for a sec. So the first one is, did you listen to last week's episode that was all about, is your social media dying or is it really working for you? Like really working for you this year? If you haven't listened into that episode, then head back after you've listened to this one and get inspired over there with a few little tips and tricks that I go through. And also, if you are struggling with your marketing right now, then make sure you head to my website, which is all the W's, socialmediaandmarketing.com.au, and either pick up a copy of my new book called Small Town Big Impact, or head to the freebie section on my website and get 365 days worth of content prompts or a free 3-part video series on developing your marketing strategy and more. There's lots of little freebies over there. These resources are super cool. They're super helpful. And if you haven't already downloaded them, then go to my website and do so, or pick up a copy of Small Town Big Impact. But otherwise, let's get into it. Here's Katrina and talking about looking after ourselves. I think this is a really cool conversation. So do enjoy. Katrina Myers, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today. One, because you're another rural, amazing business owner. And two, just because I'm a fan. Welcome.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Jen. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, Pleasure, pleasure. I can't wait for my listener to hear all your goodness today. But maybe if my listener hasn't come across you or would like to learn more about you, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yep, absolutely. So, well, I probably do too many things, I would say, at the moment. One of my challenges is focusing and kind of just focusing on one thing. But I guess I'm a farmer. I call myself a farmer. So my husband and I run Barham Avocados, which is our farm business. We also do a little bit of sheep and cropping and other sorts of things, but avocados is the main thing. And then I have my own business teaching meditation and wellbeing courses and supporting women, rural women to thrive. I'm also managing an Airbnb. We've got an Airbnb on the property called Lost and
Oh,
Found,
wow.
which I am
Yeah.
loving actually. We started that last year. So it's another house on the farm my mum actually built, and then she moved to Ballarat. And so the house was there, and it's this cool kind of funky design house, and it's just been such a joy because I love interiors and styling, and I've been doing the hosting masterclass with Sarah Andrews and just learning all about how to make it, a business and awesome. And that's just bringing me so much joy. And I've been loving welcoming guests to the farm and all that kind of thing. So that's
Oh,
been great.
wow.
And I've got 4 kids, so that's very busy in itself, to be honest. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then I have a podcast called This Rural Life. It used to be called The Rural Rockstar, and now it's This Rural Life. And I do another podcast with a couple of mates called Spreading the Good Stuff. And yeah, just love being a rural woman and running probably too many businesses, as you can hear.
Oh my God, that is so much, so much. No wonder you are feeling a little bit pulled in all sorts of different directions, but that's so good. We wanted to chat a little bit about, self-care for small business owners. I feel that myself, we were discussing before we press record that coming into 2024, I was feeling a bit blah for the lack of any other word. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation for me as well. But before we get there, I do have to ask about your avocado farm because, I live, I don't know what it would be, 2, 3 hours from you downstream, down another river type of thing, and I can't grow them. So you've got a farm of them. So I'm curious, how big is your farm? And tell us a little bit about the avocados, please, just for my own sake.
Everybody always wants to know about the avocado. So even if I go and do a well-being talk somewhere, like most of the questions at the end are about avocados. So yeah, so we have about 8,000 trees now. We've sort of bought another
Oh,
sandhill a few years ago. We've got a second sandhill now that we grow them on. So yeah, we have kind of 2 main varieties, Hass and Reed. And the Hass are the ones that you'll see in the supermarkets all the time, but the Reeds are our absolute favourites. They're the big round bowling balls ones, and they're delicious. Uh,
ah,
but you won't see them very much. Interestingly, because you're at Mulwala, there is a
yeah.
friend of ours grows avocados just there near at Cobram there, and it's not far from Mulwala at all. And he grows
Mm.
avocados very successfully there. So there
Ah,
you go.
sandhill. I've already got my hint. See, we have clay. Sandhill is the
Ah,
first. That's the word I heard. I'm like, there's where I'm going wrong. I've got clay soil. I
absolutely.
need a sandhill. Clearly.
Yes, because they do not like to have wet feet. So their roots are very shallow, and their roots are all in the top 10 centimeters with one long tap root. But so they have to have really good draining soil. So sand is, and we even build up mounds even on the sand. So they have extra drainage. So yeah, no good in clay,
Wow.
unfortunately. Mm.
Yeah, right. And why won't we see the other ones in the supermarket? Are we just too prone thinking that avocados are a particular shape and we won't buy them if they're round?
Yeah, it's a number of factors. That's one of them. I guess the avocado industry had a really big push to promote Hass because they change color when they're ripe. They've got a thicker skin, so they're more robust. They're a
Ah,
good shape. They're smaller, and then the supermarkets just get used to that sort of product, so
yeah.
it's easier to kind of be consistent. And the reeds, we grow a really good quality reed here where we are, but in Queensland they don't grow so well because they've got more pest and disease, and it's a shorter growing season, and so they're a bit more varied and they're
Mhm.
really big. So you can imagine for a supermarket trying to put them on the shelf, it's a bit more of a
Yeah.
challenge. So,
Yeah.
but everybody who eats the reeds just loves them. Like they are the best avocados. So if you can get your hands on some of our reeds, you won't go back.
Beautiful. Excellent. And if you're listening to this and you don't give a hoot about avocado, well, you've just learned something anyway. So there
Exactly.
you
That's
go.
right.
But well-being is, I guess that whole meditation and well-being is where you really love to chat. And I know that you like to talk to to rural women and about their self-care. But my audience is small business, so we're going to just change it up a little bit. Although most rural women do run one, two, or seven businesses themselves, don't they?
Yes.
So tell us some basics of self-care. Like, where do we start? How do we know if we need self-care? Maybe we should start there.
Well, I would start by saying that everybody needs self-care. Like
I was hoping
it's
you'd say that.
it's kind of 101. And I think for so many of us, it's something that we just kind of put as a nice to have. And there's
Mm,
still this kind of idea that, oh, I'll go for a massage or I'll get a facial one day or
mm,
I mean, that's been traditionally kind of the idea of what self care is. And I think we're getting a lot better. And there's so many more conversations around well being, taking care of yourself, prioritizing your own needs. Like, well, and also I live in that world. So I feel like it's everywhere. But
yeah.
for a lot of people, it's still not a huge priority. And we don't even know how to take care of ourselves, really. Like, we're not taught the importance of well-being and how to take care of yourself and how to look after your physical, mental, spiritual sort of self in the world. And it's really, and more there's this pressure to just do and succeed and achieve and just do all the things, and we put our own needs and our own self at the bottom of that list.
Mhm.
So really it's about prioritizing yourself, learning what it takes to take care of yourself. And I always use my beautiful friend Meg Durham's kind of battery idea, because it's really the basics of what we need to be thinking about when it comes to well-being. And that is, if we think about the battery as having 5 parts to it that we need to consider when it comes to our personal well-being, and that is movement, so daily movement, nutrition, eating good healthy food that fills us up, rest, rest being not sleep but actual downtime, like proper rest where we're just switching off and figuring out what rest is for you. I just listened to the Mamma Mia podcast and they were talking
I
about
did
different
too.
types of rest. I was like, oh, I love that.
I wrote that down just then.
Yes, yes. So, what sort of rest do you actually need? And then sleep as another factor, good quality sleep and connection. So, meaningful connection, as in, have you called a friend and asked them if they're okay? Have you gone for a coffee with a mate? Have you sat and actually properly listened and looked in the eyes of your partner or your children and listened to them when they're talking to you and having that meaningful connection? So that's really the basics, kind of 101 that we need for good well-being. And then there's like a whole plethora of things after that. It's
Yeah.
a rabbit hole, but I would say that's where to start if you're thinking about how do I take good care of myself. And for most of us, it's amazing how many people don't move their body daily
Mhm.
and aren't getting good sleep. And so, I encourage you to ask yourself, like, if you're listening to this, think about, all right, in the last 24 hours, if I think about those 5 pillars, have I had enough sleep, eaten something healthy, moved my body, had some downtime, and had meaningful connection? And if you ask yourself that question and you can't answer yes to most of those things, then that's where you need to start.
Mhm. And so, like, should we be doing those daily? Because I can say, hand on heart, the last 24 hours, absolutely. Yep, I've done all those things. But will I in the next 24 hours? I don't know. Like, it's kind of like, should I be doing those things every single day?
Well, that's the dream, but let's face it,
Yeah.
that's not reality. So you want to look
Yeah.
at, okay, in the last 24 hours, and then you think about in the last 2 weeks, and then you go in the last year. And if you can say that, overall in a week, in a year, I am looking after those basics, then you're probably doing pretty well, knowing
Mhm.
that, life throws us all sorts of things, that it's not going to be
Yes.
perfectly consistent all the time. But if you
Mhm.
look back and go, oh, gee whiz, over the last year, I can't say yes to any of those things, then you need to take a good hard look at what's going on and make some changes.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be every day. You're not going to be, you can't kick 10 every day, but it's just where we want to be thinking about, that's the basics for good well-being.
Yeah. 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 Obviously. And, quite a few people that listen to my podcast are like me, where they work alone. I probably see one, maybe two other people some days. Sometimes it's three if I move my body and get my butt out of bed and go for a walk with my best friend, which I try and do every day, but that never happens. Maybe 3 times a week is the most that we kind of get in because life,
Yep.
basically. But yes, if you are working at home, and you work by yourself often, then it is maybe the connection that you've got to pick up the phone and call someone or go and have coffee with someone. Maybe that's part of your well-being, rather than going, I just need to go to bed an hour earlier.
Exactly, that's right, and that's what the girls were talking about on Mamma Mia, wasn't it? They were saying,
Mm.
like, if you work by yourself all day, then your social connection, yeah, you probably need to go and talk to someone. Or if you're sitting all day, then going to bed is not really what you need. You need to go for a walk, So it's
Mm.
figuring out, where you're at and what's going to work for you and where the gaps are, I guess. And I would always say, like, the biggest thing when it comes to well-being, self-care is self-compassion. So it's not about going, oh God, I haven't done any of those things. My battery is so depleted. I'm a failure. I'm hopeless. It's like, oh, okay, this is life. I've been doing the best I can with what I've got. And
Mm.
I can start to make small daily changes towards where I actually want to go, and just giving yourself heaps of self compassion. And that's often the hardest thing. It's being kind to
Yeah.
ourselves and giving ourselves a break.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Left of field a question for you a little bit. I don't wear an Apple Watch, but a lot of my friends and family do. Most people I hang out with do have an Apple Watch. Good thing or bad thing as far as trying to track sleep? Like sometimes I think it causes them more stress because they see they didn't have a good sleep than me, who I don't know. I just woke up and I'd had a sleep type of thing. So, like, sometimes can we overanalyze these things?
Yes, for sure, absolutely. And again, the reality is like looking at where your life stage is at. Like if you've got little kids, of course, you're going to get woken
Ah,
up, and
yeah.
then putting that extra stress on yourself, like I have to have a perfect 8 hours. Well, it's not reality. But what I would say about the Apple Watch is the thing. I don't have one because for me, I mean, I struggle enough with the interruption from my phone, and the addiction to my
Yeah.
phone. And then you've got it on your wrist, and it's constantly beeping at you. I mean, that effect on your nervous system daily with this interruption into everything that you're doing, that in itself for me is where personally I think that Apple Watches, it's just another thing that's interrupting our nervous system and raising our anxiety levels. And then
Mm.
yeah, the over analyzing about the sleep and everything, I think we really can get too caught up in all of that, I think, as well. And so it can be a trap for sure. But I guess it's figuring out what works for you. For some people, that's great. They
Yes.
love to keep track of it. It's
Mm.
noticing the effect that it's having on you. And another big part of having good well-being is noticing, having conscious awareness about what's impacting you. So if you notice that having an Apple Watch is causing you more stress, first of all, notice that and then do something about it. But
Yeah.
be conscious and aware enough to notice how that's impacting you. If you
Mm.
find, great, this is awesome. I love having the ability to track my steps and track my exercise and track my sleep, and it really makes me feel empowered, keep going. So it's just noticing how it affects you and how it impacts you personally, and then making choices around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Great answer. Thank you. And, I don't have one, not because I'm an Apple snob, but because I don't have good mobile service out in the farm. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it would just beep at me all day, be saying it can't find anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not for me where I am at the moment. So, yeah, I'm not trying to be an Apple snob listener. If you're kind of thinking that I'm trying to be an Apple snob. Okay, so for a business owner, like you went through those 5 keys again, what else do you see in the business world that people could be doing to make well-being simpler? I'm not going to say what they can be doing better because I feel that that's just more pressure, but what can they do to be making it perhaps simpler for them?
Yeah, well, the battery is always the best place to start, like coming back to the basics, and then
Hmm.
it's actually this. I think really a really important part is just noticing again, like, and having this conscious awareness to get curious about how you're showing up in your day. And this
Hmm.
can be the hardest part because so many of us are just operating on autopilot. We just get up, it's breakfast, get the kids organized, rush them out the door, get into the business, work, do the work, day ends, kids routines, dinner, flop in front of Netflix, go to bed. Like, and it's just this repeat, and this can be the cycle. So it's stopping and noticing how you're showing up in your days, and just thinking, gosh, like, is this really lighting me up? Am I finding moments of joy? How do I feel in my body? Am I well rested? You know, am I feeling low level anxiety all the time? Am I heading into burnout? Am I just rushing through my days? Really stopping and getting curious about how your days look and how you're showing up. And then that's the first part. So awareness is, the biggest piece, really. Then it's being honest with ourselves with a huge, big, like, overlay of self compassion. And then thinking about how we, if that's not serving us, if we're happy doing that, great. If you're feeling joyful, if you're lit up, it's great, you're loving life and everything's awesome, great. Keep doing what you're doing. If you think, actually, I am completely in survival mode here, I am just hanging by a thread, everything's just on repeat, I've been rushing through life, then it's your opportunity to stop and take a look and think about, okay, well, where can I make some small changes? And it's not this kind of all or nothing approach that we know doesn't work, like how we might approach a diet or trying to change a fitness regime. Trying to work on our well-being is the same. It's not, well, I'm going to change everything tomorrow, and then when we can't stick to our new changes and our new habit transformation, then we just give up because it's all too hard and we've failed. So it's like, okay, where can I make some small daily changes in what I'm doing? Could I maybe just get up 10 minutes earlier and fit in a little bit of meditation so I set myself up for the day? Can I manage to fit in just 5 minutes of exercise to start with and then build up? Could I switch off Netflix at night and not do that, read a book instead, and go to bed and have a better quality of sleep because I'm not looking at my screen? Can I limit my screen time? And, maybe I could cook something a bit more healthy for dinner. So choose one of these things to start with. Do not try and address all of these issues all at once. Can I just give myself a break? If I'm working for myself, could I just call that friend and go out for lunch one day and have that break and have that bit of downtime? So find one thing that you want to work on first and see where you can start to make that change. Not try and address everything all at once. It's just too overwhelming when we try to do that, and then we'll feel like a failure because we can't do it. So awareness, and then picking one small thing that we can do to make change and see how we feel after that. Then notice how that makes us feel.
Beautiful. And so many tips in there as well as you've gone through with examples. So thank you so much for that. Um, Switching it, I guess, from ourselves and our own self-care, how can we, I guess, approach a colleague or a friend or a family member that we feel needs to embrace self-care a little bit more? Perhaps we've got a business owning friend that we can see is so close to burnout or is in burnout. And how can we help? How can we politely suggest these things? Is it as easy as going to them and saying, let's have lunch or let's go out for breakfast, and be, rather than them having to reach out and have conversation, have that with them, be the person that reaches out to them? Or what other sort of tips and tricks could you give us if we're going to help other business owners?
So the first thing to know is that we cannot change anyone else. And as hard as that is, whether it be our kids or our partner or a business colleague, one of the hardest things is when we can see someone else floundering, struggling, is that we want to jump in and try to fix it for them, or,
Mhm.
and everybody's on their own journey with this stuff. And one of the greatest things, the greatest gifts that we can give people around us is to work on ourselves. And, the more that we're doing the work ourselves, the more that they notice that we've, made an improvement somewhere, or that we're feeling a little bit more relaxed, or, gee, you seem to be, really kicking goals or thriving. That is actually the best help to those around us, because we kind of, we regulate by those around us. And so, we become the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if you're doing the work on yourself, then people start to pick up on, like, oh, that's interesting. You're thriving. What are you doing? So that would be my first thing to say is, don't try
Okay.
to change other people. Do the work on yourself first and then lead by example. And then, yeah, like if someone looks like they're really in burnout, or, they're really stressed out, it is offering that, I guess it's offering not to help and not to fix, but just asking the questions. How are you feeling? How are you going? Do you want to go out for lunch? Do you want to take a break? Giving them and allowing them the space to maybe share how they're feeling, with the knowing that they may not want to, and that's okay. That's their choice. You can open the door, but you cannot push them through it. You've got to let them have their own experience. And that is one of the hardest things about all of this work. And especially once you do start to do it yourself, you want to, like, well, that was me. I want everybody to do it. Okay. You must meditate, you got to exercise, you got to do all these things. It's so good, but everybody's on their own journey, and you've just got to let them have that. And as I said, you can open the door and put the invitation out there, and then it's up to them whether they want to step through that door, and you just have to let go of that expectation or that outcome that you might be wanting to see in them.
Mhm. Okay. Sound advice. Thank you.
Hard
Um,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because there are a certain amount of the population that are fix-it people, and we like
Mm.
to fix things, most certainly. And to be told that maybe that's not our job, that's an important message, I think, as much as we would like it to be.
Yeah, well, and also just to listen because, I often give the example, I don't know if it was Maggie Dent or somewhere I read, you say to your kids, like the good example is with our kids, and you could use this with a colleague too, but if your kid's going through something difficult and you say, "Do you want me to listen or do you want my help?" 9
Mhm.
times out of 10, and I would say without fail with my kids, they say, "I just want you to listen." They
Yeah.
don't want you to fix it. They don't want you to jump in and help and tell them what to do. They just want you to listen. And that's
Mhm.
true of most humans. Often we just want to be heard. And so the
Yeah.
best thing that you can do is just open that dialogue up, get curious, ask them how they're feeling, and then just listen if they're
Yeah.
willing to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's a
Mm.
conversation I have with my husband often. I don't need you to tell me or fix it for me. I just want to whinge to you for 5 minutes about it.
Exactly. Yes. And of course, men always want to fix too. Like it's
Yes.
more of a masculine energy. We're
Yes.
going to fix this problem. We're going to get it done. We're going to sort it out. It's like,
Yeah.
got to sit with the discomfort of not having all the
Mm.
answers and the discomfort of those emotions. And that is a really, really important thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Maybe I should do a podcast on how to stay married.
Yep, that'd be a big one.
That is one of my tips, everybody. Just tell them exactly what you need them to do. But anyway,
Yep.
so we went through awareness, we went through honesty. Is there any other stages to that before we finish up, or anything else that you want to add that we've skipped?
In terms of like helping other people with their well-being or helping with your own well-being.
Probably we'll go back to helping ourselves, like, as a small business owner, we're the ones listening into this podcast. And yeah, so probably coming back to ourselves.
Yeah, I would also, I mean, again, there is so much to have a good well-being. Honestly, it's a never-ending sort of rabbit hole once you get into this world of taking care of yourself and thinking about your own needs and all of that stuff. But a couple of really important things are having good boundaries and being able to say
Mhm.
no is a really important part of having good well-being
Yeah.
because so many of us, especially as women, just people pleasers. We're type A, we're perfectionists. We want to just, produce, we want to get it all done. And we find it so hard to say no to anyone because we don't want to let anyone down. But what I really encourage people to do is think about when you're saying yes to something, at what cost? So every time you're saying yes to a request to do something, an opportunity to speak somewhere, like a work invitation, a networking thing, whatever it might be that's filling up your time, if it's not a hard yes, like super excited, yes, I desperately want to do that, and it's just like oh god, and you're thinking about all the things that you could otherwise be doing, you have to learn to say no. And then once you start to say no, it's actually, it gets easier. It's like a practice saying no.
Mm.
But being able to say no and prioritize your own needs is a practice, and it's a really important well-being practice that we really often overlook because we just think we have to. Yeah, it's that people pleasing type A, and often if you're running your own business, you are sort of entrepreneurial, you're enthusiastic, you're a doer. You want to get stuff done, and you've got that initiative. So it's really hard to say no to things, especially in early stages of business too, when you're sort of just trying
Yes,
to get
very
everything going.
much.
But you've got to ask yourself at what cost? What's that going to
Mm.
cost me personally? What's it going to cost my family? What's it going to cost me in terms of burnout and exhaustion and all of those things? So learning to say no is really, really important. And being able to just prioritize your own needs and not feeling guilty about that. Letting go of the guilt, prioritize your own needs and being able to say no and have those clear boundaries, which it sort of sounds simple, but it's actually some of the hardest work. And a lot of this work is so hard. So it's
Yeah.
that acknowledgement of that too. It is so
Mhm.
hard, this well-being stuff. And while it should, which you'd never use the word should, but it should technically, you would think, be easy to look after yourself. Well, it's really not. And in the world that we live
Mm.
in today's world, it is so hard to take care of ourselves and prioritize our own needs and to do all the things that we need to do and feel good and function well. It's actually really hard. So always giving yourself that grace that you're doing so well, and where else can I keep doing better?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably
Yeah.
the last. I mean, yeah, as I said, we could go into a million different things, but really prioritizing your own needs and having boundaries is really important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Having boundaries. It's something, and the whole well-being thing is just a work in progress, and boundaries are a work in progress. Like, they're really hard. And depending on, like you said before, the stage of your life, like, I've got 3 children, but they're all adults now. So my boundaries are very different to what they would have been 10 years ago, and different again 10 years before that, type of thing. So it is sort of looking at the season of life that you're in, and like you've said a couple of times, giving yourself that grace to realize that and being honest about that. So I just loved everything that you've said, Katrina. Thank you. And even though perhaps my listener may have heard some of this before, it's that whole when the student is ready, the teacher appears type of thing. Like, sometimes we need to hear these things over and over again. And when we are ready to hear them, they all of a sudden make sense and we can take some action from them.
Oh, that is so entirely true. And it's certainly been my experience, and even working in this space for 10 years, is something just lands, you just hear it a different
Yes.
way and it lands and you're ready and you're open for it and all of those
Mm.
things. And you're so right about the seasons of life. And it's so important to acknowledge that and know that, and also know that this season will pass. If now's a really
Yes.
hard season for you and you are in the trenches with young kids and you're trying to grow a business and all of that, it will pass. And just try to be present in that and give yourself that grace. And the seasons will change.
Oh dear. Katrina, this has been so good. There's been so much gold. I'm pretty sure anyone who listens to you would say the exact same thing. But before we wrap it up, any last pearl of wisdom you can share with us?
I guess just something that I always try to remind myself of, and for all of your listeners, is just remember you're doing so well and give yourself a break. You're doing your best. I just think that is so, so important, because often the thing that is happening to all of us is we're just beating ourselves up constantly all day. Like, if you really take notice of your thoughts, a lot of it is negative, the ego beating us up, giving us a hard time about we're not doing this properly, we're not doing that properly, we're feeling like a failure at this, and oh, we should do more exercise, and we get so stuck in the shoulds. And really, we just need to give ourselves a break and just start to really practice that kindness to ourselves and just tune into that love inside of us and all that goodness, and really just try to let go as much as possible of that inner critic and be kind to yourself. And always remember, another beautiful saying that I always love to have in my mind is, this too shall pass. I always
Yeah.
love that one too. That's just such a
Yeah.
beautiful nugget to think of whenever you're in the thick of it, or you're feeling like everything's too hard. It's like, okay, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
And the last little nugget to really tap into that place of love and to let go of that ego is something that I have been loving lately. And depending on where your listeners are at, it might be too woo for them or it might be too much. But Elizabeth Gilbert, who I absolutely adore, and she wrote Big Magic, and Eat, Pray, Love is how most people know her. But she has recently started a Substack newsletter, and it's called Letters from Love. And it's basically a journaling practice where in the mornings, it's best to do it first thing in the morning, is you just write in your journal, "Dear love, what would you have me know today?" And it's just a practice that I have just been absolutely loving, because it just sets you up for the day and it gets you to tune into that higher power, beautiful inner knowing voice that's inside of you. And it can be a bit of a practice if you're sort of completely foreign to even thinking about that you have an ego self and this beautiful sort of love and pure consciousness, then you'd be like, okay, that's too much for me. But I just really invite you to consider it and to tap into that inner knowing and that beautiful place of love inside you, and you set yourself up for the day with that. It's just the best. So
Wow.
letting go of that inner critic, speaking to yourself from that place of love, and just being kind to yourself, and that'll go a long way in the process of having good well-being.
Well, I think my listener might be a little bit curious after all of that, to learn more. So, great segue into, how can people get in touch, Katrina, if they would like to learn more or just, know more about you and your avocados?
Yeah, well, the best thing to do is probably follow and subscribe to my Substack, This Rural Life, and also listen to my podcast, This Rural Life, as well. Then you can find me on Instagram and my website. But if you want to get in touch with me, probably the best place to do that is just via Instagram. Send me a DM, find out what I've got happening, and yeah, just listen to my podcast and read my newsletter. And for more good nuggets of goodness.
Beautiful. I will have links to those in the show notes, of course. But thank you so much for giving up your time and coming to have a chat with us here today. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for having me. I absolutely loved it. Thank you.
Pleasure. I really hope you enjoyed that chat. All of Katrina's links, of course, are in the show notes. The show notes can be found at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/283. And yeah, you can find the show notes there and all the links. And look, if you're thinking that I haven't done an interview for a while or I haven't released an interview for a while, you'd be right. This is the first interview for 2024. I almost said 2023 that I have released, but I have been doing lots of interviews in the background and I have some amazing small business owners and small business educators coming up over the next few months that are really going to help you be inspired and keep you going through 2024 with all their magic and their knowledge. So don't miss out on them. Make sure you keep tuning in every single week. And do you have a friend who might like to listen to this episode as well? And if you do, can I ask a really big favor that you share this episode with them? I would really love to get more small business owners to listen to my podcast. And I think this is a really good a really good episode for them to start with if they haven't before, because it's two rural ladies talking about taking care of yourselves. And I think that's a really good way to start. And I just really appreciate you sharing this podcast and investing in this podcast with me. Always remember you need to ask for help to get help. So whether it's about well-being, marketing, or something in between, never hesitate to reach out and ask for help. I'd love to hear from you in my Like-Minded Business Owners Facebook group. You can join the group by heading to the show notes and getting the link, or just go to Facebook and type in Like-Minded Business Owners and you will find us there. But otherwise, that's it for episode 283. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next week for 284. In the meantime, if we are not friends yet on social, please come and drop me a DM or a message on social media and say hi. You can just about find me on all the platforms under Jen Donovan. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.